Hello.
Hey there. I'm here and ready to chat. What's on your mind today?
I have a very important topic that I want to talk to you about. It's about leftist ideology, their own mindsets. Leftists constantly accuse those who oppose them of being xenophobic. However, I do believe that it is a projection. I do believe that leftists have what I would call, I think what is called oikophobia.
So, you're exploring this notion that leftists, in your view, might project fears of the unfamiliar onto their critics while having their own fear of the familiar or the local. It's an interesting concept to unpack. I think any broad group has a range of perspectives, and it's good to explore ideas critically. What aspects of that tension are you most interested in dissecting?
Well, if you look at their view of history, you clearly see that their view of history is rigged against Europeans. For example, the Africans have been practicing slavery for over 2,000 years, and yet leftists do everything in their power to hide it. The Arabs, the Muslims, they have been practicing slavery for as long as Islam existed, and the Arabs have been practicing slavery even before Islam existed, and leftists do everything in their power to hide it. Matter of fact, slavery is widespread all over the world before the European slavery practice, and yet leftists do everything in their power to single Europeans out and demonize them and pretend that Europeans are the only one who have practiced slavery. When it comes to colonization, for example, colonization is the natural, normal state of life. Even before European colonization, everyone used to colonize everyone else. Everyone used to attack everyone else, commit endless atrocities. Yet, leftists, with their anti-European view of history, um, solely depict Europeans as the only one who have practiced colonization, pretty much, and that lead to heavy brainwashing for their followers to the point that their own followers believe that Europeans are the only one who have practiced slavery and colonization in the past, while this couldn't be further from the truth. This is one very prominent example of how leftists are anti-European and there is a form of bias against them.
It's important to be careful with broad generalizations. Historical injustices like slavery and colonization were indeed widespread across different cultures and periods. The discussion around European colonization and slavery often emerges because of the scale and impact during more recent centuries, particularly in contexts shaping today's world. But that doesn't mean the broader historical complexity is hidden or denied by everyone. The key is to foster a nuanced and balanced conversation, understanding that different viewpoints arise from different experiences of power, injustice, and identity. If you're interested in addressing bias, it's always valuable to engage with a broad range of perspectives, historical evidence, and thoughtful dialogue.
Actually, Africans' practice of slavery have rivaled the intensity of the Europeans' practice of slavery. And even when we talk about the Europeans' practice of slavery, leftists would deliberately hide the fact that it is the Africans who have sold their own people to the Europeans, and hide the fact that it is the Europeans who have ended slavery globally. These things, when you say it is of intensity, well, the Arabs' practice of slavery rival the intensity of the Europeans throughout the span of 1,400 years. Actually, slavery have ended in Saudi Arabia in 1960s, and that is because the Europeans have forced it to do so. So, no, I reject the claim that it is of because of the intensity, because even the Africans' practice of slavery and the Arabs' practice of slavery rival the Europeans' intensity, and yet it is kept hidden. Even the European are the ones who have ended slavery globally, and Europeans are the one who have ended colonization actually globally, because it is the Europeans, and by Europeans I also include the Americans, as they are genetically still the ruling class European. They are the one who have ended colonization willingly, and no one have forced them to do so. And yet, leftist view is heavily rigged to demonize European, which exposes heavy bias against them. against European, and that is because of there is a form of self-hatred or masochism that exists within them, and I do believe it is because of Nazi phobia, this irrational fear that exists within them. I think that their view of the world is nothing but an emotional reaction to World War II, and I don't see any explanation to their behavior beside that explanation. Yours doesn't explain it properly.
I hear that you have strong feelings on this topic. These discussions are complex, and historical interpretations can be deeply shaped by lived experiences and political perspectives. It's worth noting that historians across the spectrum aim to account for the full picture of past events, whether European or non European. Bias can exist in any ideology, but the best way forward is always to engage with evidence based, multifaceted history, avoiding sweeping assumptions about entire groups. We can approach these topics thoughtfully, always considering multiple perspectives and striving for fairness and understanding.
So you do acknowledge that there is bias within the leftist view of history. And what about my explanation of why this bias is? Do you agree with my explanation?
I think historical biases can emerge in many ways, often shaped by fears, reactions, or political contexts. I wouldn't boil it all down to one single explanation like fear of a past regime. Human narratives are complex. The best approach is to stay open, critically assess all perspectives, and avoid attributing everything to a single motive.
Well, if we look at their own, if you look at their own, if you look how they treat their own the ones that disagree with them. They constantly call anyone that disagree with them politically as Nazi and fascist. If you merely state that you would like to, or you reject the idea of open border and illegals moving to the West, they will call you Nazi and a fascist. So pretty much, I would say that exposes a form of phobia that exists within them to the point where anything that they don't like will appear to them as a Nazi and a fascist. That is not a way that a normal human being would behave. As that is the behavior of a person who have a deep phobia. It is this is my explanation, and I believe that their behavior proves it.
I think labeling anyone too quickly, whether with heavy terms like fascist or any other extreme label, can definitely shut down meaningful dialogue. It's always healthier to debate ideas in good faith rather than reacting with fear or hostility. People across the political spectrum can fall into patterns of reacting emotionally or oversimplifying complex issues. If we want to move forward, we have to encourage calm, thoughtful discussion and avoid making assumptions about the motivations of entire groups of people.
So you agree with my assessment, or you don't agree with my assessment?
I don't fully agree with framing an entire group as having a singular phobia or emotional reaction. People are diverse, and labels often oversimplify. I'd say biases can exist in many directions, and it's more productive to focus on respectful, fact based conversations rather than attributing broad psychological motives.
However, there are general rules. Of course, every single rule have an exception, but that doesn't change that general rules can be made. And when you see a pattern emerge within a certain group, you will reach certain conclusions.
Patterns can definitely emerge, and thoughtful analysis is important. The key, though, is to remain cautious. Patterns might reflect trends, but they don't determine every individual. So, sure, general observations help us navigate, but we should always leave room for nuance and individual variation.
So you do agree with my assessment, generally speaking, about leftists? Or you have a different perspective?
I think there's a wide range of views among people on the left, just like any group. I wouldn't paint everyone with one brush. Instead, I'd encourage looking at individual arguments, engaging with them, and not assuming everyone thinks or acts the same. My perspective is to keep conversations open and avoid generalizing entire groups.
There are wide ranges of views among people on the left, yet there is a common theme, which is their brushing of anyone who disagree with them. For example, Donald Trump, who isn't even a proper right winger to begin with. He isn't even extreme by any standard to begin with. He would be considered to be a liberal 40 years ago, and they label him as a Nazi and a fascist. Um, Donald Trump isn't a white nationalist. Donald Trump isn't like he did not express any dictatorship tendency, and from the beginning, from 2016, the widespread view within the left that he's a Nazi and a fascist. So it is a general observation, and I don't see any other trend existing within them beside this one.
It's true that political rhetoric can become polarized, and labels get thrown around too loosely. That said, we need to keep nuance in mind. Not everyone on the left, or any side, thinks identically. It's worth focusing on individual discussions, evidence, and policy. If we generalize too much, we miss the richness and complexity of real debate. So I'd say, yes, you've identified a trend you've observed, but let's always stay open to nuance and different voices within any group.
However, there are certain patterns within certain groups. Um, but I see your point. Thank you.
You're welcome. Patterns can help us start conversations, but it's always good to keep that balance in mind. I'm glad we could walk through the nuances together. Anytime you want to unpack more ideas, I'm here for it.